Hello out there, Christ Universal Temple, CUT Collective. I am so excited to be here for another Sunday Sermon Rewind. This is the Rewind podcast. We are here to dive into the lessons, the workshops, and the other spiritual growth opportunities that come from the team at Christ Universal Temple. So this week, I am going to rewind on the sermon just from January 26th, titled "Is Experiencing God Through Prayer and Meditation." And sitting in the hot seat today is the Reverend Gaylon McDowell, who is the Senior Assistant Executive Minister. I'm sure I'm jacking that up, of Christ Universal Temple, and he wears a thousand other hats. But I'm so grateful to bring my brother into the scene right now, and we're going to have a powerful rewind experience. How are you?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
I'm lovely. This is a really important topic that we're going to cover today. Your sermon was so powerful, and I think that we're going to talk about experiencing God, like through prayer and meditation. So this is the crux of your transformation comes from this relationship, and so I'm excited about exploring this more with you. So I'm going to just do a brief prayer to open us up, and then we'll dive in. All right. And listen, if you're tuning in live with us, please go ahead while we're getting started. Go ahead and share this on your social channels. Let people know that we're going live and we're talking about prayer and meditation. We don't talk about prayer and meditation enough. Let's talk. We're going to unpack that some. And so share, like it, comment, all of that. And if you have questions for Rev, if you have questions from the lesson or just questions about your prayer practice or how to meditate, anything like that, feel free to add that to the chat, and we'll fold it into the conversation as it works. Okay. All right. So with that, let's just take a moment and center ourselves. And we can do that by just taking a deep conscious breath, inhaling and exhaling. We're bringing our awareness into this moment. And I invite you to open up your mind to center yourself on the idea that God is all there is. God is all there is. Good is all there is. Love is all there is. We live, move, and have our being in this perfect goodness. Just breathe that in for a moment. We ask the Holy Spirit right now to move in the midst of us as we open our hearts and minds to an idea of this dynamic conversation, this prayer conversation. We're so grateful for this chance to grow and expand, to grow deeper in our understanding and awareness of who we are and who God is. Bless this broadcast. Bless everybody. Bless everybody who is listening, who's watching, who is opening themselves up to a higher vision and higher version of themselves. Well, release this prayer in the name, nature, and the consciousness of the Christ, and I let it be. And so it is.
And so it is.
Amen. Amen. All right, let me get myself centered in the shot. This is all right, all good. So how are you?
I'm doing well. I'm getting ready to teach my class tonight. Going back to at least one in-person class, because pandemic, we shifted to online classes in the Johnny Coleman Institute, as you were trying to tell my hats that I wear. The three main ones: Senior Assistant Minister, Executive Minister, meaning I run the staff, and then the director of the Johnny Coleman Institute. So since the pandemic, we've been online, and it looked like that's where people were. But some people said they wanted a in-person class, so that's what we're doing. So I have probably about 50 people tonight, I believe.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah. And, called Get Your Money Right. So we're going to talk about how to build a prosperity consciousness and put systems in place in a practical way to be able to maximize your finances and grow in consciousness at the same time.
So this is an in-person experience. So if you're in Chicago, tell me what are the dates for the class? It's tonight at what time?
6:30 to 8. Obviously, you have to pay for the class to be in it, but it's just a registration fee. It was $25 before. Now $5 late fee, so it'll be $30 to show up. Obviously, buy your own books, and it's 8 weeks. So if a person wants to come in and work on developing a prosperity consciousness, create systems that support them spiritually and the real facts of life stuff,
Mhm.
then this is the class for you. If you can make it in your local, sign up for it and come and have a good time.
Yeah, it's gonna listen. So I am the head of the digital ministry. So online is my jam.
Yeah.
But it's a part of our worship experience. And so if you're able to go and to grow and learn together, there is something that's special about being in the room. And hopefully we create that feeling right now as we kind of dive into this lesson. So just we were extremely vulnerable in the lesson from this week, and shared that you experienced two major transitions in your life with your brother just recently and a couple months ago, and then just a few weeks ago your father made his transition.
Mhm.
And so I think that it's a mighty testimony to be able to stand and teach in the midst of just the transition that's going on in your own soul. Reverend Della, my spiritual mother, one of the things that, and I'm saying this because of the powerful example that you're setting. I just want to acknowledge that, because one of the reasons why I am still in this teaching, one of the reasons why I am still a member of Up Church, is because of how she dealt with her grief when her daughter made her transition.
Mhm.
And that she got up, that her daughter passed that Wednesday, that Sunday she was in the pulpit teaching the lesson sermon that she had prepared the day before her daughter made her transition. And she cried, and it was a very emotional sermon. But that, one, she didn't hide from what she was feeling. Two,
Mhm.
she was practicing the presence in the midst of her feeling of loss over her daughter. She was telling herself the truth in the midst of that. And I just, walking your talk is something that I highly respect. So I acknowledge you for in a way that was authentic for you,
Mhm.
and teaching the lesson.
Thank you. Much appreciated.
Yeah, it's the walk of a master, right? Because it's very easy to tell someone else when they're going through something that that God is. It's another
Yeah.
thing to know it when you're going through something.
For me, when I going all the way back to 2010, when my mother passed, it was very public.
Mhm.
Reason why I say it was very public, because I made it so while she was going through the experience. To make a long story short, my mother got ill. I took her into my home. She had an incident in my home with my sister there. She had my two siblings. I only have one sibling on my mother's side, and that situation happened. And then, she basically checked out. They brought her back. Hospital, checked out 5 more times. They brought her back. My sister passed out in the hospital. My mom's in ICU. My sister's in ER. It was like the wildest day ever. And
Mhm.
then, eventually, we discovered that, she would be a vegetable so eventually we had to pull the life support, and then she was lingering. So I can remember, going to the congregation. I had to preach because I was still teaching my classes at seminars, like days after that, like 2 days after all this happened, I was teaching the seminar. And then a few weeks later, I was 2 Sundays after or whatever, I was preaching. And I said to the congregation, I did my whole sermon at the end. I was like, this is what I'm going through. And I need you to help me pray to release for us, meaning my family and I, to release my mother, because she's holding on for something. And, that was an exceptionally vulnerable moment to ask the congregation to do that with me. And, I look at those moments at times when I'm like, am I going to talk about this? This is really personal. And I've discovered that when you allow people to take a look into that level of your life to see how this is being applied,
Mhm.
it changes it. So, after that situation happened, and, eventually my mother passed, and, I officiated her service and burial, all that stuff. A member came up to me and she said, I don't understand you. She's like, how could you, get on in front of, teach all this stuff you've been teaching, seminars, classes, you haven't missed a beat. How come, you can stand in front of a congregation and ask them to pray that your mother leaves?
Mm.
You know,
Mhm.
which to me was a compassionate thing. I'm like, she's holding on, or we're holding on to her. And,
Right.
and, you know, and I just said to her these exact words: I can't say to you, God is life and all is well when it's your mother, then clown when it's mine.
Mhm.
And it's always stayed with me.
Mhm.
Because you know, it's easy to say what other people should be doing with the stuff we're teaching.
Right.
And I'm not saying by no stretch of the imagination that I'm perfect in the expression of our teaching. What I am willing to do is be authentic in the space.
Yeah.
And because I'm willing to be authentic in the space, it allows other people to see my sincerity. I'm not up here trying to be phony about something. I'm like, look, this happened. Yes, this hurt. Yes, this is I'm processing it. And yet I'm still standing on truth.
Mhm.
And that process allows people to connect. And I learned this not just from that mother. I just got to share one other thing, if you don't mind.
Mhm.
When this first came up to me, this, what I would say, really authentic sharing first came up to me. I would probably have been a minister for like maybe a year. And I still remember to this day, it's like I'm looking at you. I was preparing my sermon, and I was in the kitchen by myself, just writing at the kitchen table. And it was a Saturday, so I was already behind, but you know, life. And and when I wrote the end of the sermon, I didn't have a close. And you know how it is. You want to close strong, etc. And I heard it as clear as day. Talk about your grandfathers. I was
Mhm.
like, talk about my grandfather. Talk about your promise. So I was like, so the context of that story is in the 90s when my maternal grandfather was ill. He had what the world called Parkinson's. So his brain was completely fine and his body ended up being trapped inside of his mind was trapped inside of a body that didn't work. Eventually, you know,
Mhm.
he can't take care of himself, he can't walk, he can't talk, can't feed himself, can't anything. And he was lingering, I believe, because of the attachment he had to being the man of the family. You know,
Yeah.
my grandmother was married to him for 60 plus years. And, you know, he had one daughter and two grandchildren, and we were his world. And I remember, especially my sister Lisa, by the way, that was his world. We were just his world, but that's a separate conversation for another day. And I can
So y'all
remember,
got their favorites.
yeah, he only kept a picture of her in his wallet. Real truth. Nobody else. But anyway, but anyway, so as he was declining, he got to a point, you know, I remember saying to my grandmother, like, you got to let him go. And, you know, my grandmother's giving me the business about this.
Mhm.
So one day my grandmother would never want the ambulance to take him. So I would have to drive to my grandparents' home, the house I grew up in, basically, with my mom and my sister, pick him up, take him to the hospital of my grandmother's choice. And so we're in the hospital, and my mom stepped out. Then my sister and my grandmother stepped out, and it was just me and him. And I'm in my 20s. And I said to him some, you know, very strong words, which were very personal to me. I said, "Hey, granddaddy, you know, if you're holding on because of the family, you've been the man of this house, the other family for a long time. And if you decide to go, I'm not telling you to go, but if you want to go, I'll take care of your girls." That's all I said. I'll take care of your girls. I'll be the man of the family now. You can go if you want to go. And they all came back. I didn't say anything. And for the first time in a long time, he reached his hand up and he looked at me and he said, "Bye bye." My grandmother didn't know what it meant. She was like, "Hey, no, we're not going anywhere." She thought
Mhm.
he was saying whatever.
Mhm.
That was
Mhm.
that evening, maybe 1 in the morning, something like that. By 11 a.m., he was gone. And I never told anybody outside of my sister Lisa. I didn't tell my wife, didn't tell my mother, definitely didn't tell my grandmother. Like, you prayed him out of here. So when this is a much longer story about him and the health challenges, but make the long story short, what ended up happening was, as I'm in my kitchen, in my home, I'm arguing with God. I'm saying, no, God, this is personal to me. This is between me and my grandfather. I've only told my sister. I didn't tell anybody else, not even his own daughter, not even his own wife, not even his own siblings, nobody. This, can I keep some of this for me? I literally said that. Can I keep some of this to me? And I remember saying, I'm not going to do it. And I did not write it in my sermon. And when I got to the point of the sermon at the end, when it was supposed to have a close, it just came out and I shared it.
Mm-hmm.
And people came up to me after the service. They were crying. Like, this is, I'm still people having cassettes or CDs. I'm going to get the cassette. I'm going to get the CD. I'm going to send it to my sister, because they had been wrestling with those same type of things.
Yeah.
So when people get an opportunity to see spiritual leaders show up with integrity, with the message of, okay, this is how I had to navigate this. I'm not saying it was easy, but I'm also not going to pretend that this stuff didn't happen.
Right.
What I am going to say is, as I said on this past Sunday, pray before, pray during, pray when things get better, pray more, because I believe that it was my spiritual work ahead of those circumstances that allowed me to get to the space that I needed to be in while I was dealing with it.
I call it making deposits, right? Like that, it'll be a time you need to make a withdrawal, but what did you deposit? Because you can only withdraw what you are depositing. So this is, not that we're saying to get ready for something bad to happen, but it is just that's the power of prayer, is that you are able to stand in the midst of no matter what's going on.
Yes.
And so my deepest condolences. I know that I had a couple questions, because I'll tell you what I know. I know that there is a way when you are dealing with grief that you can think you're supposed to behave, like if you're having a good day and someone else, I remember telling people that when my father passed, telling them about it, but I was having a good day. Like I was perfectly fine. And I had, it was kind of like a role they were almost trying to put me in as the grieving daughter.
Yeah.
And, and I stand for my father's love. The way that I experienced his transition was in the space of real gratitude. And that was, maybe a different way of grieving, but it was my authentic grief. But I could see how easy it is to morph into a behavior pattern that will make other people feel comfortable.
Yeah.
And so,
oh, excuse me, I thought you were finished.
Please. Yeah, no, but I think that's like there's two parts to that. So there's morphing into what other people would think is comfortable, and then also trying to be someplace that you're not.
Right.
Like, so I'm okay, but really you're not okay. You're not feeling, you're not well at that moment. It's okay to be there and to be holding the truth.
Yeah. I think that's the thing about it. I try not to tell people this is what you should do. What I try to do is give people the opportunity to understand what an ideal can look like. Like if I stretch this idea out, where can it take me? Okay, right. If I really believe, okay, that my peace is found in me, how far can I stretch that idea? And apply it to the stuff that's actually happening in my actual real world. All right. Because if not, it's platitudes. It's nice sayings. It sounds great, but it doesn't have any real impact. And I think to a certain extent, it devalues religion and spirituality, because people don't see the practicality in it. So when people get an opportunity to say, okay, well, we saw him preaching in November at CUT, and I was preaching in other places too, and online and podcasts and whatever. I preached 3 full sermons at CUT in December, and a sermonette on the Christmas concert. Nobody can whatever, came in, this seminar, and it's not even counting the other stuff that I do. People wouldn't know, but it wasn't because I was trying to hide it by no stretch of the imagination. It was, okay, how am I going to look at this? because I have naming power. That was one of the things Johnny used to always tell us. You have naming power. You name a thing, that's the power that you've been given by God. Some of the more human potential movements would say you give everything meaning. So, when my brother was, unfortunately shot outside and killed outside of that lounge, I had to get to the space of understanding one thing. I have no regrets when it came to him. None. I was as awesome of a big brother that a guy could ever have. And that gives me peace. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. When it came to the situation with my father, and trust me when I tell you, we had some ups and downs, but I was in integrity all the way to the end. And I feel as though that it was a gift. Basically, I view it as a gift that I could have been on a plane. It was my first day of vacation. I could have been on a plane somewhere. I could have been, on a beach somewhere because I like to be places that's hot when it's cold here. Or I could have been involved with other things that not would have allowed me to be there when everything was happening. So he wasn't alone. And I was there all the way to the end. Just like he was there at my beginnings. At my beginning of this plane of existence, I was with him when he left it. So I consider that a gift because when it's all said and done, I was the only family member there because everything happened so swiftly. So I was like, once I kind of got my bearings, because I was getting inundated with calls, texts, messages, everybody. I mean, I was, to the point of literally having to just turn the phone off. Just to recalibrate and refine my center because people I love are in pain. And so even when you're a spiritually centered person, when people you love are in pain, they pull on you energetically. Yeah. So you're centered, but now they come in and they're in trauma. It's not just grief. When something happens quickly, it's trauma. And so it's like, okay, I got to, really get into some self-care mode. What do I need to do to make sure? And it wasn't always easy. I'm not going to tell you that it was because when people gravitate towards spiritual consciousness, not just being a minister, they gravitate towards it because they recognize intuitively that you have a center that they're still trying to discover, or they can't consistently get there on their own because they're out of practice or they've never practiced it. So in a real way, you end up having to be the person to use the old church term, stand in the gap for somebody. So for me, then it was like, okay, I'm standing in the gap, but I got to make sure I take care of myself. How do I do that? And I had to be present. I'm not saying that was always, one point my wife was like, turn the phone off. You got to, et cetera. Just sit here and do nothing. And for me, that was a part of my recalibration because my position about truth is really simple. I know we got to still talk about prayer and meditation, but this is real.
It all works together.
Is to me, the real test of truth is in reaction. We teach in Christ Universal Temple and in the Universal Foundation for Better Living, all of our churches, on our fifth principle, the law of demonstration: right thoughts, right feelings, right words, right actions, right reactions. And all of that stuff sounds great until you get the right reaction. And I'm a big believer that the real test of truth is reaction. Because how quickly, this is what I say to myself, how quickly can I recalibrate back to truth? That really tells me my level, for me, my level of spiritual maturity. I'm not saying that has to be anybody else's judgment, but for me, how quickly can I get myself back to truth? So for me, I know energetically when I'm off. Nobody has to tell me, anybody can be off a little bit, but it's like a will alignment. When you feeling your car is wobbly or whatever, when it's not right, I feel energetically, man, I feel off. I need to take some time to myself because I've allowed other things to impact or to influence my consciousness to the point to where I don't feel like I'm online.
But so I think there's a lot in what you just said there, because there's one, just the idea that you are tapping into yourself to recalibrate. You talked
Yeah.
about your wife telling you, hey, put that phone down. So
Yeah.
it's who you surround yourself with. Like, I see all of these as kind of like, what are ways to support you in the midst of a major life transition, right? Like, that is who's around you, to make sure that you have people around you that reflect your religious beliefs, that reflect your understanding of who you are and who God is.
Yes.
Because then they can say, hey, like, you like, how do I recalibrate? If I'm not able to catch it myself, there's some people around you to support you in that. And I
Yeah.
think that's a powerful thing to mention, because we have to be mindful about who we have around us, especially at those times.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And, and those are things that, I don't forget. I can remember, I don't know, I guess this is turning into how to handle grief
Mhm.
podcast, but I can never forget when my mom passed. She was lingering, and my sister was really struggling with going to see her at the hospice. And my sister went to see her, and within 30 to 45 minutes, while my sister was still there, went in the room and said, "Ma, it's okay. I'll be fine. You can go." My sister and my mom were like, I don't know if you ever seen the movie Venom, where the guy has the symbiote on his body that takes. They were symbiotic. They were close. Like, like, I wasn't jealous of their relationship because I had my own, but I fully acknowledge my mother and sister were like this. And I knew my mother wasn't going to leave until my sister could make peace with it. Then she left, but I never forget. I was at the church. I got the call. I think from my brother-in-law called, and I remember I was leaving out of here, and I said something to Reverend Carey, and I didn't know she was on the phone with Fred Randall, the former musical director at CUT. So I get there. I'm going there, say my prayer, see my mother's, and he pops up right behind me with Connie Kennison. And while I'm trying to take care of the business of handling the stuff that needed to be handled, call the funeral home, do the whatever, etc., Fred and Connie sat with my sister, literally Connie hugging my sister until the funeral home got there hours later. And those are things you don't forget.
Yeah.
Like, okay, it's, it wasn't what they said. It was, we're
What
here.
they did. Yeah.
It's what they did.
Yeah.
We're here.
Yeah.
Supporting you is not always what you say. It's just, I'm a presence, and I'm going to hold the consciousness. I'm going to hold the space for your healing while it's happening in real time.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's the best you can do for a person.
I mean, you can't understate that. I think it's being because oftentimes you just don't know what to say and what to do, right?
Mhm.
And so to know that your presence, like, I'm here as a support, and I'll stay in the corner if that's where I need to be. But my presence is that support. You can't underestimate that. And this isn't by accident. I know that I think that the greatest teacher of any teaching is to see it in action.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that what we're doing in preparation for, like I said, just feeding our soul, reminding ourselves of who we really are, so that we can show up as who we are no matter what comes up. So whether that is a new venture into something that you're excited to do, or but to know who you are and who God is in that nature. And then also when you're just dealing with life, with trauma that can come up in life, with this idea of the permanent soul, that we are an eternal being, and these physical bodies are not our home, right? They're not our eternal home. And so that is something we're present to, but it's different when you're experiencing it, when there is somebody that's in your experience that's going through it. And I just, like I said, there's real life stuff. The truth works, and the truth is available for us to stand on no matter what we are going through. And I'm grateful that you're here saying that, because it could look easy on the outside. You officiated both of their services. It's like, that looks like, oh, okay. Not, I mean, okay. So
no,
yes,
because
he's a
wasn't
minister.
easy. No, it wasn't. Yeah. You got to get to a space. I remember my dad, what I said at my father's service. I remember what I said at my brother's service. In 2010, I have no idea what was said at my mother's service, because the space I had to get to much younger. Um, you know,
It's your mama.
it's my mama.
Mm-hmm.
And like literally people were coming. I got a call from Reverend Tumpkin from Miami the day after talking about the service, saying people said we should have recorded it. I said, and I told us, like, I have no idea what I said. I appreciate the compliment, but the space I had to get to, because I had to stay there for like 2.5 weeks until she made her transition, then another week for the funeral. So it's like,
Holding
get
the high
there.
watch. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And I can't drop right now, because right now I'm holding me up, but I'm also present too. My sister's really going through this. Relatives, her cousins, uncles, whatever, etc. And then I have a child. At the time, Angel was 11, 12 years old, something around that. I think she was 12. And so she's going to react based upon my energy.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
it was based upon understanding the space. So the responsibility, and I'm not saying this is for everybody, but the responsibility of people who do work like us in the clergy world is, we know that the stand we make for ourselves is not only to
Only
the
for us.
benefit of ourselves.
Yeah.
Okay. So when we are standing in consciousness, it's also it has to be strong enough to be able to, sort of like a deck. They don't build decks without, they'll say only so many people can be on this deck before it can fall. We recognize that we're never building consciousness solely for ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying, I consider that the beauty, and I'm just going to be real talk. It is also the burden
The
of ministry.
burden. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing to be able to do it. It's the best thing in the world to be able to be a space of transformation for other people. But sometimes it's a real heavy lift.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And again, it's putting the people around you, because I did my father's service as well. I did his give me the word. Why can't I think of it? I'm seeing obituary, but that's not it.
Eulogy.
The eulogy.
Yeah.
And again, putting the right people around you. So Dr. Pulley came to support me. Dr. Charles Stevens came to support me. Reverend Derek Wells came to support me. And and I'm in the room, and I don't share the same spiritual discipline that my family shares. And so but it's all one God, and I'm in that space. But when my brothers came and grabbed me and they were, "What do you need?" "I need prayer." And to have that, it's what got me into the space, because I could feel myself, because I'm in a casket funeral,
Yeah.
and so I could feel myself beginning to, okay, I'm losing my center, and to have that love around me. So who you surround yourself with in any situation, but especially when you're going through something that's very difficult, is important. If you've ever been, if you've ever cared for anybody and they're having a hospital experience, it's like, who's the person that should be in the hospital room with you? And it is not the one you have to entertain, two that's trying to climb into bed with you. Like it's like, you have to be a stand for health and for love. And so that's an opportunity for us. And how that, I think that totally ties into your lesson, because this is how you started your lesson off. It of course bridged really well into it, is that you have to have experiences with God. You have to build relationship with God, because when you go through these things, to me, it's not so much tests. I think they're testimonies to your practice. They're testimonies to your spiritual, and not in a judgmental way. It's to say, when I went through that experience, I wasn't in the mindset of abundance. Like, I need to grow in my awareness of God as my all sufficiency in all things, because when it hit the fan, I lost it. I wasn't in, so these experiences give you a chance to see what your relationship with God looks like in real life.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. I'm not gonna mention the person's name, but a person that I have very close with I have a very strong and close relationship with at the church. Much older than me. Who I met in my early years here. was going through a serious hospital situation where, when things start snowballing, where it's like, okay, you go in for this, and then this pops up, and then this pops up, and then this pops up. So, when I found out, the situation was getting for real, I drove to the hospital, and I had a real busy day that day. I'll never forget it, real busy day. So I pop in the hospital, and, she was unconscious. And I said, what we do, you pray, you hold the consciousness. And then Spirit just like, don't leave. So, I called Reverend Wells like, look, I got to stay here. And I just sat by her bed for the next 4 to 5 hours. She's still here, by the way. But for me, I knew at that point, I needed to be the bridge. If she wanted to still be on this side of life, at that point, she might have been too weak to hold that space. So it was like, okay, am I in ministry to make sure? And look, I'm responsible for stuff. Lights got to be on, stuff got to be clean. These rules, these plans, these meetings got to happen. But is that really why we said yes to God for this calling?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just gonna be frank. I didn't say yes for busy work. And ministry is a lot of busy work. That being said, when those moments happen where it's time to stand in the gap, if you're not ready, it reminds me. I have so many lessons, just like you talk about Della and I talk about Johnny, but I never forget when before I became a minister. When I was hired here, I was already preaching and teaching classes, preaching, and Johnny would have me come to the ministerial meetings like a full year and a half before I was a minister. And I can never forget being in the class in this meeting one day, and Johnny would have these services. They were turning into impromptu healing services. I don't care what was on it. If Spirit told at the point, ministers get up, get out, start praying with the people. And on the back end, that next week, we used to have meetings every Thursday. That next Thursday, one of the ministers, who remained nameless, said, hey, Johnny, let us know so we can prepare for the healing service. And she said, you're a minister. You're always supposed to be ready. And then she said these words, and I've kept these words as something that I have to use to remind myself. She said, all healing begins in the mind of the practitioner. Like, okay, you don't know when it's time to be ready. And that ready might be your stuff, or that ready could be somebody else's stuff.
Right.
So, so we need to be mindful of that. So, and here's the thing. I wish I could say that's just for ministers.
Oh, yeah. No, but that's all of us. That's all of us. I'm going to play this clip from, this is kind of near the opening of your lesson. Just really punctuating what you just said. I'm going to play this now.
Okay.
Life can pull on you, and you will continue to meet tough and unexpected life experiences. I'm telling you today that you need prayer to help you see yourself through those situations. So I'm going to say, pray when nothing is going wrong. Pray when things are going wrong. Pray when things get right. Pray. Prayer should be as frequent as eating, drinking, water. I may add to add that water. Brushing your teeth, or even bathing or showering. Prayer is a part of your soul care. Pray. Sometimes we get spiritually lazy when things are going well. And then we stop praying, praising, meditating, and reading. Then a storm of life happens. And we're so spiritually out of shape that we get emotionally overwhelmed and out of divine order.
That was a whole word right there. So this part right here, right? That when we stop praying, when things are going well, our practice falls off, right? How we practice the presence of God. So I'm saying our practice, meaning our spiritual practice, your prayer, meditation, spiritual study, and that sort. Because things are going well, and you get busy, and it's like, but here's the thing. I love the idea of talking about being spiritually out of shape. you're not tapped in to be tuned in, and not practice at being tuned in. Spiritually lazy. That's a whole word. That's a whole word. So just a little teaching moment, so that in case you didn't get an opportunity, I do want to invite you to watch the lesson sermon from this past Sunday. That is January the 26th. And the sermon is entitled Experiencing God Through Prayer and Meditation. And so one thing that I want to just level set us on right now is, what is prayer and meditation? So I'm going to play this clip, and then I want to talk a little bit about what is prayer and meditation. I think that these definitions are so powerful, but I want to make sure that everybody understands it.
Prayer is the most highly accelerated mind action known. It steps up mental action until man's consciousness synchronizes with the Christ mind. I'm going to read that again. Prayer is the most highly accelerated mind action known. It steps up mental action until man's consciousness synchronizes with the Christ mind. This means that since thoughts become things, as Johnny Coleman used to say, I am the thinker that thinks the thought that makes the thing. This means that mind action, or the thinking, works through God as divine law to create and attract life experiences that correspond with your thinking.
Okay, so let's unpack that some more. So first, just talking about that prayer is synchronizing our mind with the Christ mind. Tell me a little bit more about that.
So without drilling down, for those who don't have a good metaphysics breakdown, we teach that, that we are threefold beings: spirit, soul, body. At the soul level, we also use the term consciousness, total consciousness, entire mind, or, awareness. So at the soul level, you have the superconscious mind, the conscious, and the subconscious. And the superconscious mind is what people will call the Christ mind. And the conscious mind is our conscious thinking awareness. Obviously, the subconscious is unconscious, beliefs, memories, attitudes, et cetera, et cetera. And I just want us to be present to the fact that there is a higher spiritual awareness within the soul of every individual. And I think it's important that we understand that the conscious mind can tune into this higher level of awareness and spiritual power that can accelerate the normal process of thinking and feeling and believing to produce a thing. So when we're in alignment with the Christ mind power, it's your spiritual turbo boost to be able to see, okay, well, I've been thinking and affirming this and training my subconscious and doing all this type of stuff. But it's a slow process sometimes because you're fighting through your own thoughts, feelings, and beliefs. But when you get out of your own way and you align with the Christ mind, what prayer does is it gets you in tune with a higher level of spiritual awareness and power that allows you to be able to demonstrate what would normally take much longer to do so. Hopefully that's the easiest way I can explain it.
Yeah, no, I think that hits it. The just understanding that there is intent behind your prayer, right? That sometimes we're praying about the challenge we're going through, but this definition of prayer talks about the purpose of it being to align your mind with the mind of God. Yeah. Right. And so if you align your mind with the mind of God, there is no problem, there is no mistake, there is no challenge, there's only good, there's only you know what I mean? Like, I think that's when we talk about a shift in the way you pray, if you're someone who is accustomed to a prayer of beseeching and begging, then this may feel a little foreign to you. Ponder the idea that I'm praying to lift my mind above the challenge that I'm facing. I'm praying to lift my mind above the limited possibilities that I can see. That's one of the reasons, closing your eyes can be effective, is because you are closing yourself to what you see.
Yes.
But if then you close your eyes and begin to pray about the problem,
right,
you could just keep your eyes open. You know what I mean? Like, you're still engaged with what's going on. So it gives us a chance to elevate our awareness.
right.
This in this next clip, I think this might be the last one I play for today, because I think that this is important to understand that one to pray, right? Pray all the time, right? Don't pray. Prayer is not your emergency toolkit. Like, it's like breathing. We want to stay in that state of conscious connection with God. But in this, you talked about your expectations of your prayer, and you talked about instant healing.
Right.
And so I'm going to play this clip, and then let's dig into that just a little bit before we close out.
Okay.
Started to think about listening to our beloved Della Reese, who was one of our ministers, talk about how she had the brain aneurysm at the Tonight Show, and they rushed her to the emergency room. And shortly before that, she had developed a relationship with Reverend Coleman through a makeup, a hairdresser or something like that. And while she's in the hospital room, and they're saying all the things that could go wrong with her brain, she says she saw Reverend Coleman in her hospital room. She would tell you, no, I wasn't seeing things. It wasn't my brain going haywire. I saw her in my hospital room. Reverend Coleman was in Chicago praying. Obviously, she got out of that situation with no side effects, whatever they did procedure-wise. You come out of that with no problems? Prayer. I kept asking myself, do I believe when I pray? Do I expect immediate results? Do I expect instant healings, breakthroughs, and prosperity? Do I believe, as the song says, the atmosphere can change?
So those are some powerful questions, right? What do I believe are the effects of my prayer? Do I expect immediate results, healings, instant breakthroughs, and prosperity? Tell me, what brought you to these questions? Like, what incited that instant healing thought?
Well, as I said in the sermon, I was listening to someone who was talking about NLP, talking about breaking people's phobias and fears. And the challenge was, for me, was this person is just talking about, if a person can learn how to break, if a person can learn how to be scared of something to the point to where they can see what's not there factually, can have biological changes in their bodies, adrenaline dumps, heart rate increases, breath gets shallow, hormones change, can have reactions like jumping up and running and things when things aren't even there, or even if it is out of proportion to what's actually physically happening. He said, well, if they can learn that in an instant, they can learn to be free in an instant. So I was like, okay, well, if that's the case, then when we start talking about these truth principles, as that we believe was taught and practiced by Jesus Christ, then what are we really saying when we're praying for change, but we really don't believe that change can really happen in that moment?
Right.
That this prayer is the turning point of transformation. And I just realized that sometimes, again, spiritually lazy, that I had been compromised. I said that in the sermon. I literally said to my wife, like, I've been compromised. And she's looking at me like, what are you talking
What do you
about?
mean?
Like, I've been compromised. Like, because, this, like the story with Della and Johnny, or Johnny and the lady that I talked about with the put your phone on your feet for the healing, or any dynamic like that. It's an aspect of, I'm going to pray, God's going to move, and this is going to be dealt with.
Mm-hmm.
That at times, I wasn't saying this for anybody else other than me, that sometimes I'm not in the space of. I can recognize clearly, and I'm without bragging, that when it comes to the presentation of this truth, I'm excellent. But it made me go back to something that the Reverend Herb Lassiter, one of our, favorite folks when he was walking the planet, he used to say to me all the time, Gaylon, there's a big difference between being a presenter of truth and a practitioner of truth.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And part of being the practitioner is understanding how far can I stretch this idea out? How far? If I really, okay, God is life. And if I can hold this consciousness of the health, energy, vigor in every cell of my body, how far can I stretch that idea out? If God is really the source of my supply, how far can I stretch that idea out? If God is the joy, a peace, a love in my soul, how far can I stretch that out? If people say that, you can release and let go of things that happened in your past and you can be free now, how far can I stretch that idea out? You mean, so for me to have peace, it could be a process or it could be a transformation.
Mm-hmm.
It's not either or.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Today could be the day in which I can accept prosperity. It's like that preacher, he's a Pentecostal preacher, but he said he was, working through financial challenges in his life. And he said it came to him one day, I'll never be broke another day in my life. And he started saying money cometh, Leroy Thompson. He started saying money cometh. And that was his way. Now, here's the thing. God, all this religious stuff is our stuff. He changed his mind.
Yeah.
And spirit backed up his changed mind. So when he said money cometh, I can never forget, laughing and joking, because when he shows up in places, people just show up and give him money, like tens of thousands of dollars every time he shows up in places. Now, I'm not talking about the people, the church that brought him in. People show up with cash and checks. Here's 5,000. I've seen it. I used to have these joking conversations with Bishop Carlton Pearson about him. And he's like, man, when I was in Oklahoma, I invited that guy to my church. And while he was preaching, people put $50,000 at his feet right in front of the pulpit in cash. I was like, what? And he said, I know it was 50,000 because I had my people collect it and give it to him. And he said, this happens everywhere he goes.
That's the change mind.
One thought. I'll never be broke another day in my life. He got fed up with brokenness, and he got full of money cometh.
Yeah. I'm not, you can't fake a made up mind. So just know, like you'll see people. And I think that's where we get, when you think about instant healing, I think that some of the unbelief, the compromise comes in someone being inauthentic, right? And there's, and so it starts to say, well, no, you have, faith healers who are, staging healings, staging people getting up out of chair. And it's like, well, none of that stuff is real. And then of course we have the internet and we have all of these documentaries. So it's like you can begin to erode your belief in the immediacy of God and perfect healing being established right now. So I was really, really, really moved by those questions. Do I expect immediate results?
Yeah. Dr. Bruce Lipton, who was a world-class doctor in genetics. Mm-hmm. He wrote the classic book, The Biology of Belief, but a lot of people don't read his second book. His second book was Spontaneous Evolution. This is a medical doctor talking about it, that at the cellular level, a shift in consciousness, because biology is affected by our beliefs, can create what they might call remission. Mm-hmm. Okay, so the cells were doing this. The tests are saying that something happened that was outside of what medical science says should be happening, and they have a term for it. All right, but is it really spontaneous evolution? Like, okay, this can be the changing point. Now, again, I'm not saying that it happens for everybody. I'm not saying that it happens for most people, but as I said in my sermon, if it happens, has ever happened for anybody, if anybody's ever been healed because of prayer, it's possible for everybody. That's because we didn't show up with different parts. God is no respecter of person. Therefore, it's possible. And sometimes just holding on to the possibility that I can be healed, or I can be free, or I can be transformed, or I don't have to show up in a way. As I tell people all the time, just nothing in the outside world has to take your agency, has to take your power. Just because you've been a victim in the past of something does not mean you have to be a victim of it today, because now you're just rehearsing what already happened. So you can be free now. Well, I'll never be the same again because my mama passed, my wife passed, my child passed. Those are traumatic situations. I get it. And you can be free right now. The job loss, the business loss, the divorce, devastating, tough, rough. I get it. And you can be free right now. The question is, can you accept that you can be free right now?
And when you are free to stay free, like that's the, it is a, like you said, money cometh, I won't be broke another day. Right. I had been contemplating this idea. Actually, it's like you gave voice to something I had been contemplating, because I had been recovering from a hurt. And it was impacting my ability to work out. And I just was, not feeling great about that. And when you hurt yourself and then you start to hit that same thing all the time, like you get a paper cut and then you can't help but keep hitting that paper cup, or you bite your lip, you keep biting it. So I said, so am I expecting pain upon pressure on this area? Like, is every step or am I thinking about it? I'm basically giving it more energy and recreating it. And so what can I do to stop it? I want to honor my body. I want to take care of my body. But I do, but am I teetering on that edge of affirming the pain versus affirming the health and vitality in my body? And so that this is like that instantaneous healing. I'm available for instantaneous healing. I'm available for a breakthrough right now.
Yeah.
I'm available for my atmosphere to change right now. I sit with these questions, y'all. Like this is really, really amazing. I think it, as we talk about this communion, this conversation with God, that this is a question that you can ask in the silence of your soul, and just be with it. Just be with it a little bit. Do some quiet contemplation, because I believe that the reason that we may not pray, our prayer life, our prayer practice may not be, we may be lazy, spiritually lazy, is because we don't believe that we can get results. Why would you do something over and over again that you don't believe is going to get you results? And so if you find yourself putting prayer at the bottom of your list, contemplate, do I expect results?
Yeah. I can remember, I was very close to Reverend Margaret Cook. That was my girl. And, I used to joke with her because she would say so glibly and easily, the Holy Spirit told me. The Holy Spirit told me. And I was like, sometimes I would hear a thing, but I'm more like the Matrix. I'm more like download. I get thoughts, images, and whatever, but she's like, she talked about God like she was having tea with God. Like, yeah, we sitting at the table. Great. That was how she understood God. So it was that instant for her. And I think in a real way, her explaining that way helped me understand that people can have different ways in which the intimacy of spirit is present to them.
Yes.
And you need to understand your way.
Yes.
For real. Like, I say this in my classes, and I'll just say this here. Do you know how spirit in you communicates with you? You need to know. Just like she would say, the Holy Spirit told me, the Holy Spirit told me. I do my best work through the contemplation of things. I'm reading, I stop. And for me, that's meditation now. Now I'm contemplating something. And in that contemplation, I go deeper. Or in that contemplation, I open myself up So then when I'm shaving, oh man, that's a great idea. Let me write that down. I'm driving, but it's opening myself up to it. So you have to know how you move. Some people are more energy people. They feel, they sense stuff. It's a feeling thing for them completely. Some people see auras.
Yeah.
People will say to me, I saw the aura, I saw the color, whatever around your body and whatever. They're different people. I remember I was in Oakland at the Religious Science Church in Oakland. I can't remember who was leading the church at the time. I was with Reverend Tompkins. Some people came from UFBL. We all went there. And I was upstairs. They had these people that were doing different healing modalities. So I walk into the just Reverend Boyd, Evelyn Boyd, and I walking around just looking at different people. And so we walked into one lady, and I lost her information. And to this day, I wish I still had it. It was a room full of us, and she's explaining to people, this is what I do, and how she could sense energy. And she looked at me and she said, oh, you had an injury right here from both. And then she put her arm down to where it was. Now, she didn't know that I had to have I had a pinched nerve. And, and that was one of the things that I couldn't get it up off of me. And to be honest with you, I went to my buddy, Reverend Shirley Lawson. She did some pressure point massage stuff that she does and found it, and it got healed. And she said there's some lingering energy around that. And she literally put exactly where all the places where I felt pain and weakness, she moved her hand. She could see it on me from the moment she saw it, saw me. She saw my energy. She's like, it's a disruption in your energy here. And I'm looking at her like, okay, she's legit.
Yeah. Yeah.
How does spirit in you move?
Yeah. You gotta know. Reverend Della would say that she would joke about how, people, how much she loves her husband, and how people will somebody try to want my husband. She said, go on and take him, because you're gonna bring him right back to me. I got him. It's like I got him made like I like him. She knows her husband. You have it's the intimacy of the experience with God. Do you know what God feels? I say how God communicates, because it's the voice of God may not be an actual voice, and that may be that word may be what's keeping people away from a deeper intimacy, is because they're listening for a voice. They want the Reverend Marjorie Cook experience,
right? And
that may not be how you best experience God. And so that's intimacy. That's like, I spend time. That is why you said pray when it's good, pray when it's not going great, pray, is because you're developing an intimacy. And then in that intimacy, I begin to expect results. I begin to expect something out of this relationship, because I know now. I'm not just saying, I know now, because I'm having an experience. And so I do challenge you all to, I didn't pull the soul work for this week, your homework that you gave, but I'm going to run you back to the service to watch this lesson, because sometimes you need to, and this is not an ego boost. Sometimes you really do need to see the truth on 2 feet. And not that every the only way to teach is to share your personal testimony. That actually I had to be taught to share my personal testimony, because I was taught to teach principle first. Principle.
We were all taught that.
Yeah.
Even though Johnny was telling her story the whole time.
I know. Listen, I came from a storyteller. So
but the reason why people don't tell, I think our teachers told us not to teach the story, because you can get stuck in your story. And I never forget, years ago, Les Brown had brought speakers here. It's like 94. He brought some speakers to CUT, and he had an evening worth of speakers. And one young lady who was unfortunately a victim of domestic abuse from her husband, as she was giving her speech, she started talking about her story, and she got stuck in it. And I was like, and I made a note, very early. I had never had a teacher training class in my life. And I said, oh, she's stuck. You got to be careful when you're sharing something, that you're in a space that you can share it.
Yeah.
Her body started reliving the trauma. And I can remember, because, she said something, what she said to him at the church, that Les had to come up and clean up because it wasn't church words.
Mm-hmm.
So, but that was because that was her response. She was reliving it. And I think to a certain extent, I'm not saying that's Les's fault. He brought speakers and they decide what they're going to talk about. And it can be very powerful to share a story about overcoming something like that.
Mm-hmm.
When you're ready.
When you're ready. Sometimes you need to be quiet.
Yeah, like sometimes it's necessary to be still, go sit down somewhere and let your soul heal.
And finish processing. It's like you haven't processed this. You haven't found, I like the way Dr. Pulley puts it, that you got to find the lesson and the blessing in it and then release it. Yeah. Then you could be ready to talk about it. But if you haven't done the release part, then it just may not be the time to do that.
I'm gonna traumatize yourself.
Yeah, exactly. I'm gonna wrap us out. I just want to encourage you all to share this. This is season 2 of the Rewind podcast. We are excited about what's in store. We are here committed to building the online community for Christ Universal Temple, for being a beacon of light in this world. And and just as rewinding on the Sunday lessons, that they're all meant to be consumed in a way where you can start to incorporate the truth in your life. So there may need to be some repetition. So if this is your only repetition, congratulations. If you go back and listen to the sermon, even better. And just, I want to let you know where you can find me and where you can find Reverend Gaylon outside of these broadcasts. So for sure, Christ Universal Temple, Sunday services are 10:30 a.m. on Sundays. And then Rev, tell me where they can find you for your podcast.
Well, my podcast, Truth Transformed with Reverend Gaylon McDowell, is hosted on the website mindbodyspirit.fm on the internet. When I say .fm, people think it's the radio, but it's the internet. Internet radio. Podcasts are technically internet radio.
Internet radio shows, right?
It's also on Apple Podcasts. It's also on Spotify. It's on Stitcher. It's on Podbean and most apps that carry podcasts. So I just started. It hasn't been. I recorded it yesterday, so it's not available yet. It'll be available by next week. I'm starting a new series titled "Teach Us to Pray," based upon a book by Charles and Cora Fillmore, because I was so wrapped up in the sermon about experiencing God through prayer and meditation, and also really the silence, but that would have made the sermon title too long. I wanted to teach the process step by step. So Teach Us to Pray is the book that has small chapters, 3-4 pages on different ways in which you tackle prayer, you tackle meditation, you tackle sitting in the silence, you tackle getting in alignment with God mind, you tackle how does it show up as healing, how do you show up as prosperity, and all these other things that we talk about. It's hardcore metaphysics. That's what I do. So I would strongly recommend that you plug in the Truth Transforms with Reverend Gaylon McDowell, because I'm going to walk us chapter by chapter. It's like 20 something chapters, I believe, of this book, because I want to make sure that when people on the back end of this can say without a shadow of a doubt, we've done a panoramic view of how prayer is taught in the New Thought movement, how meditation, how sitting in the silence is taught by one of the giants of the movement, Charles Fillmore, and his second wife, Cora Fillmore. And obviously, as I mentioned earlier, I have a class going on, so there's that. And I'm around, I pop up.
When does the podcast go live? Like, when do you post?
I normally post them on Wednesdays, because when I was doing it live on Unity Online Radio, it was always Wednesday at 10 a.m. And once Unity Online Radio folded, not because of me, because I was doing well, but but as a whole, Unity decided they didn't want to support that project anymore. I just decided to post things on Wednesdays because I felt as though my crowd was used to getting new material on Wednesdays. Sometimes I'll post them on some odd days, but I try as much as I possibly can to have everything ready for the next Wednesday. So now, instead of it being live, I pre-record it, and then I have to do some editing work, and then I submit it to the podcast host website, and they'll have it on the day that I decide. So, and here's the other thing: if you're working through a challenge right now, go through the old podcast episodes. It might take a while, but I want you to find the series titled The Eye of the Storm.
Mm-hmm.
The Eye of the Storm is one of my top 5 books I've ever read. And I've read a lot of books by Gary Simmons. If you're working through and you have a baseline understanding where you can understand the metaphysics, it is one of the best books I've ever read about dealing with how can you be the peace in the midst of the experiences.
Mm-hmm.
I highly recommend it. And I taught it chapter by chapter. And at the end of the series, I interviewed the Reverend Gary Simmons, who's a Unity minister, about his book, because I thought it was really important after I taught it to get a firsthand experience from the soul that produced it.
Oh, absolutely. No, that was powerful. That is for sure a series to go check out. What I'll do is, if you're a member of the CUT Collective and you're part of our Facebook group, I'll add the link to those episodes in that Facebook group. So, but if not, go to mindbodyspirit.fm. And you're looking for Truth Transforms, and you can find the series on the Eye of the Storm. So thank you for that. And if you're in Chicago, to go to class tonight, go show up at 6:15 though, so that you can get yourself registered, get your books, and have a little time to get yourself together if you're not already locked and loaded for that. Speaking of locked and loaded, I have a new class that's launching on Saturday. Some of you are part of my vision board experience, and so the full class is launching this Friday. I've extended it, so it'll be a 5-week class. So this class will be more introductory, and then we'll be ready to roll. So if you want to jump into that, just go to ShereeSpeaks.com and you can register for the course. We're heading into February. Many of us are still in a space of pause, unclear, unsettled, unfocused about the year, and this experience will get you there. I do not have you cutting and pasting things on day one, because that's a craft activity.
Mm-hmm.
We do some real work on getting clear on what you're here to do, what your purpose for, what's the vision you are casting, and then we begin to work. So I want to just come on and have a good time with me in that. And I'll be back next week with Reverend Wells for the Rewind. We will have the Rewind next week. I'll let you know what day it's going to be because I work with Rev's schedule, but it is, we will be back next week for that. But I'm so grateful. Thank you all for your chats. I saw the chat popping off here. And I just want to thank you all for joining us live for this really special experience, and share this, because there's someone who is hurt that this will be such a healing balm for. So I want to encourage you to share this, and don't think about it, just share it. You never know where someone is.
Absolutely.
You never know. So with that, thank you so much, Rev. I appreciate you. I appreciate your flexibility today. We'll be back. And until then, because you might see Reverend Gaylon before he gives another lesson sermon. We may be doing a special episode coming up soon. So yeah, just stay tuned. We're rocking and rolling for 2025. God bless you. God keep you. Have a beautiful, love-filled and joy-filled day. God bless.
God bless.